One inheritance picture, two brothers, same parents, same childhood home, same $31,000 each inherited from their grandmother on the same Tuesday afternoon in March 11 years ago. One of them spent most of it within 18 months. A vacation he'd always wanted, a car upgrade that felt long overdue, and a few thousand scattered across things he genuinely can't remember today. Not reckless, exactly. Just spent the way most people spend money when it suddenly appears without a plan attached. The other one did something with his $31,000 that he struggled to explain to anyone at the time because it sounded too small and too slow to be worth talking about. He put it somewhere boring, left it completely alone, and then kept adding to it every single month. Not a lot, just consistently, for 11 years without stopping. Today, one brother is still living paycheck to paycheck on a salary that's actually quite good. The other one quietly crossed $400,000 last year without changing a single thing about his daily life. The difference wasn't the $31,000. It wasn't intelligence, discipline, or even income. It was one habit, one single repeatable behavior that separated everything that came after. This is the story of what that habit actually is. Here's what most people get wrong about wealthy people. They imagine the gap is created by a single big decision, a lucky investment, a perfectly timed business move, a moment of genius that changed everything. Occasionally, that's true, but for the overwhelming majority of people who end up genuinely wealthy, the gap was created by something far less dramatic: a habit. One specific repeatable behavior installed early and never abandoned, that compounded quietly in the background while life happened around it. What follows are 10 versions of that habit, the specific behaviors that consistently separate people who build real wealth from people who earn well and somehow still end up with nothing to show for it decades later. The brother who spent the inheritance wasn't careless with money. He paid his bills on time, avoided credit card debt, and considered himself reasonably responsible. What he never did was pay himself first, meaning before a single bill, a single subscription, a single dinner out, a fixed amount moved automatically into a separate account the moment income arrived. He always planned to save whatever was left. And for 11 years, whatever was left turned out to be almost every single month, almost nothing. The other brother set up an automatic transfer the day he started his first job. 15% of every paycheck moved before he could see it, before he could spend it, before it had the chance to become part of the mental math he used to decide what he could afford that week. Paying yourself first isn't a saving strategy. It's a structural decision that removes saving from the category of things that require willpower and puts it in the category of things that simply happen, whether willpower shows up that day or not. The rich don't save what's left over. They spend what's left over after saving. That single reversal, installed as an automatic habit, is the foundation almost every other financial outcome is built on. Most people have a rough idea of what they earn. Almost nobody has a precise idea of where it actually goes. Not because they don't care, but because tracking spending is uncomfortable enough that most people avoid it entirely. The brother who spent the inheritance couldn't have told you within $400 what he spent last month. The number existed, but it lived in a fog of card transactions and forgotten subscriptions and lunches that felt small individually and added up to something nobody wanted to look at directly. The other brother reviews his accounts every single Sunday morning. Not obsessively it takes about 12 minutes, but consistently, without exception. He knows to within a narrow margin exactly where every dollar went last week. Not because he's controlling or anxious, but because you cannot course correct a direction you're not monitoring. This is the habit of financial visibility. Money you aren't watching closely tends to flow toward the path of least resistance, which almost never aligns with where you actually want to end up. Before the inheritance was spent, both brothers stood in front of the same $31,000 and saw completely different things. One saw a sum of money and thought about what it could buy: experiences, upgrades, comfort, a version of life he'd been deferring for years. All of those things were reasonable. None of them would still be worth $31,000 in a year. The other one saw the same $31,000 and thought about what it could become: a first investment, a foundation, a compounding mechanism that could keep growing without requiring any additional decisions from him once it was in place. The habit of thinking in assets doesn't mean never spending money on anything enjoyable. It means building a reflex that asks, before any significant outflow, a simple question: is this a purchase or is this an asset? A purchase decreases in value the moment it happens. An asset increases in value over time or generates income, or ideally both. Wealthy people aren't people who never buy things. They're people who buy assets first and use what's left for everything else. Here's the part that surprises most people when they study how wealth actually accumulates. The mechanism isn't exciting. It's almost aggressively ordinary. An index fund that gets the same monthly contribution regardless of what the market did that week. A rental property managed by someone else throwing off $700 a month, year after year, without drama. A savings account that simply grows because money goes in and nothing comes out. The brother who spent the inheritance was always looking for the version of investing that felt exciting enough to commit to. A specific stock that seemed like it was about to break out. A friend's startup that sounded promising. A strategy that would make up for the years he'd already missed. None of those ever quite materialized into the thing he was waiting for. The other brother has never made a single investment that would impress anyone at a dinner table. His entire strategy could be explained in 2 sentences. He's been using those 2 sentences consistently for 11 years without changing them once. The habit of financial boredom is, counterintuitively, one of the rarest and most valuable habits a person can develop. Because it requires resisting a specific kind of excitement that feels like opportunity but is almost always just noise. Most people understand compound interest in theory. Almost nobody feels it in their body until they've let it run long enough to become real. At year 1, the other brother's $31,000 had grown to roughly $34,000, with monthly contributions added on top. Not impressive, barely noticeable, especially compared to the vacation photos the first brother had come back from looking genuinely happy and rested. At year 5, the account had crossed $90,000. Noticeable, but not dramatic. At year 11, it crossed $400,000. Not because anything special happened, not because he made a smart trade or caught a lucky break, but because he simply didn't stop. The math ran. He let it run. The number on the other side of 11 years of doing almost nothing was the kind of number that looks like luck from the outside and looks like arithmetic from the inside. The habit of time is the most powerful financial force available to almost any person at almost any income level, and it's almost entirely wasted by people waiting for a better version of it to arrive before they start. Watch the brother who spent the inheritance across any 5-year period, and you'll see a pattern. Every time his income grew, his lifestyle grew alongside it automatically. A slightly bigger apartment, a slightly newer car, a slightly more expensive version of almost everything, as though earning more and spending more were the same instruction. They're not. But they feel like the same instruction until someone decides they aren't. The other brother has one rule he's applied to every raise and every unexpected income event for 11 years. Nothing upgrades for at least 12 months. Not the apartment, not the car, not the phone, not the gym. The raise goes straight into the investment account for a full year, and only after 12 months does he decide deliberately whether any upgrade is actually worth the recurring cost it will introduce permanently into his budget. Most upgrades don't survive that wait, not because 12 months makes them unaffordable, because 12 months makes most of them feel optional in a way they didn't when the money first arrived. The single highest returning investment either brother made in the first 5 years wasn't in the stock market. It wasn't real estate. It was a $1,200 course the second brother took in year 2 that directly led to a $14,000 salary increase within 18 months, a return that no index fund has ever matched. This is the habit most personal finance content ignores entirely. The highest leverage investment available to most people, especially early in their career, isn't in an account. It's in their own knowledge, skills, and earning capacity, because a higher income invested consistently compounds far faster than the same percentage return on a smaller base. Wealthy people invest in their own capabilities first. Not exclusively, not at the expense of financial investments, but consistently as a core habit. Because they understand that the person doing the investing matters just as much as the vehicle the money goes into. Here's what happens to most people's money in the moment. They're tired, they're hungry, they're responding to an ad that's been following them for 3 days. Or they're sitting next to someone at dinner who just ordered the expensive thing, and the social pressure to match it is exactly strong enough to override whatever plan existed that morning. In the moment, financial decisions are almost always worse than decisions made in advance. In a calm, unhurried state with no social pressure and no immediate emotional state pushing in any particular direction. The second brother makes almost no significant financial decisions in the moment. His savings transfer is automatic. His investment contribution is automatic. His fun money is a fixed weekly amount, already separated, that he can spend without guilt precisely because the decision about how much it should be was made months ago, not Tuesday at 7 p.m. when he was tired and slightly bored. The habit of advanced decision-making removes willpower from the equation entirely. And willpower, as almost everyone eventually discovers, is a deeply unreliable financial strategy. The first brother has never decided what enough looks like. Every number he's ever had in his head as a goal has quietly shifted further away the moment he got close to it. First it was paying off debt, then it was a certain amount in savings, then it was an income level that always seemed to be just one more raise away from actually feeling like enough. An undefined finish line means the race never ends, and a race with no finish line is indistinguishable from a treadmill. The second brother calculated his actual number in year 3, not an aspirational number, the real one, the specific monthly cash flow that would cover his actual expenses without requiring another paycheck. He tracked the gap between that number and his passive income every single month after that, the way someone trains for a specific date rather than exercising vaguely and hoping for the best. Wealthy people know, with specificity, what they're building toward, and that specificity turns an abstract aspiration into a measurable, trackable, completable goal. Year 3 was the hardest year for the second brother. The account balance had grown, but not dramatically. The contributions felt small. A close friend was making significantly more money, spending visibly, and appeared to be enjoying a life that seemed, from the outside, objectively better. He kept going anyway. Not because he was certain it would work, not because he felt inspired, because he decided once that this was the plan. And changing the plan every time it stopped feeling impressive was the exact thing he'd watched derail every other person he knew who'd started with good financial intentions. The habit of consistency under boredom is the final filter that separates people who build real wealth from people who start the process and abandon it before the compounding becomes visible. The first 4 years of any serious financial habit almost never look impressive from the outside. The next 7 years make the first 4 look like the most important decision a person ever made. Go back to that Tuesday in March. 2 brothers, same inheritance, same starting point, down to the dollar. One of them saw $31,000 and thought about what it could buy today. One saw $31,000 and thought about what it could become over time. Neither decision was made from stupidity or genius. Both were made from a habit of thinking that had been quietly forming for years before the money ever arrived. That's the real story behind the money habit that separates the rich from everyone else. It isn't a secret strategy. It isn't exclusive information. It's a set of repeatable behaviors installed once that compound quietly in the background of an ordinary life, until the background stops being ordinary at all. The first brother still doesn't know the exact number in the second brother's account. The second brother has never told him. Not from shame on either side, just because at a certain point the number stopped being the point. The habit was the point. The number was just what happened when the habit ran long enough without stopping. If this gave you a different way of thinking about money, subscribe. New stories every week about wealth, choices, and the lives behind the numbers.